Ladies and gentlemen, RosterWatch Nation, welcome back to the epic RosterWatch Podcast, brought to you by RosterWatch.com. My name is Alex Dunlap, here, of course, with the Trashman, as we are getting ready to leave for Mobile, Alabama. Trashman, what the hell's going on, brother?
Just prepping for this, cold front that we're getting here in Austin, Texas, 2 days after spring weather.
Yep. These rattlesnakes and mosquitoes and stuff just don't know what the hell to be doing, man. They don't know what to do with themselves. They want to come out of hibernation, then they get murdered. So, yeah, man, I can't say that I feel bad for them. I can't say.
Hopefully they stay asleep.
Yeah. All right. So just a couple things that I wanted to get at before we get started. First, if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, if you could please give us a 5-star rating and review. The powers that be are starting to give a shit about that again. So if you could just take a second to review the podcast on Apple Podcasts, it would mean a lot to us. Or if you're watching on YouTube, if you could just click that you like the video or subscribe. What else am I supposed to say? Oh, and comment below. Tell us your favorite and tell us what you think of Trashman.
Send me funds on my Venmo account. I'll give it to you. Just
Yeah. So anyway, if you could help us out with all that. Also, again, next week we'll be at the Senior Bowl. So I don't know exactly what our recording schedule is going to be for podcasts or any of the rest of it, but we're going to be there with the guys from Player Profiler. We're going to be there with Matt and Cody.
I imagine we'll probably put something up every day we're there, right?
Yeah, I mean, we got a sick place, dude. A really nice condo downtown. It looks like there's a lot of room to record. And so we're going to, and Matt always brings a bunch of great recording equipment and stuff like that. So hopefully we'll be able to put something together. I'm sure it'll be kind of co-branded between our YouTube channel and their YouTube channel, but it will be fun regardless. And it'll be good content. Of course, today we're going to be talking about some of our dynasty decisions that we're making in the RosterWatch Top 250 and also breaking down the Virginia wide receiver that I had talk about a tough decision that I've had trouble figuring out what the hell's up with this guy that I'm super interested to see next week in Mobile, Dontayvion Wicks. Hey, Trashman, I have a question for you. Have you dared to look at the weather yet in Mobile for next week?
No.
You might want to pack some rain gear.
If it's anything like last year, then
yeah. And here's the thing, man. Every time there's always in the Mobile Bay area, there's always going to be chances of rain, like every day. It's just how it goes. A lot of the time, it won't be raining during practice. The good news is that I'm holding on to right now is it's just showing, 40% chance of rain basically every day that will be there, but none of the stuff where it's showing like a little lightning bolt underneath it. And so as long as we don't get thunderstorms, they'll have practice outside. If it's pouring, they'll have it outside. If it's drizzling, they'll have it outside. I'm hoping that we get a couple of those days where it's just just kind of in between, in between the different kind of rain that we'll be able to take in practice. The good news is, even in the worst case scenario, practice is shut down for the media. We will be able to go and in the team hotel, we'll watch back the all 22s right after practice, and we'll be able to watch the drills and everything like that and be able to report the same way. But I sure do hope, knock on wood, we've only had it happen a few times where we've been locked out of those things. So we'll hope for the best this year. But certainly looking forward to it and getting started with everything that we have with our prospecting stuff. Before we get to any of that, though, Trashman, let's talk about some of these tough dynasty decisions. You said that you're having a lot of trouble with some of the old guys, like, and I'll be interested to hear who it is that you're talking about, because there's one in particular that I'm sort of interested in. But for me, here are two that I have a lot of trouble with. And it's two prospects that I really loved coming out. And they're I think that we kind of have them in the same area here. One of them is Jerry Jeudy. We have ranked sort of in the same area as like George Pickens and Jamison Williams, Treylon Burks and stuff like this. I wonder if, he's only 24 years old, and I can understand why he would be a valuable asset in Dynasty. But yeah, I don't know, man. If you look at him, last year he was able to play in 15 games and, 100 targets, 67 receptions for 972 and 6 touchdowns. He averaged 13.6 fantasy points per game in PPR, but that still was only good for a sort of a back end wide receiver 2. Do we think Jerry Jeudy's best days are ahead of him? I mean, is it with Russell Wilson? He's going to be connected to him. There's no way out of that thing. That's an anchor.
He seems like the best receiver on that team.
Okay, so then you're necessarily a lot lower on Courtland Sutton, who we have ranked like 50 spots lower. And Courtland Sutton all of a sudden is going to be 28 years old.
Yeah.
If I guess I can kind of agree with that. With Jeudy, I just have a little bit of trouble, man. I feel like every year it's the old banana in the tailpipe. It's stepping on the old rake with Jerry Jeudy. You draft him as a wide receiver 2. I guess he sort of ended up getting there. He sort of ended up getting there. But
I don't think I've ever drafted Jerry Jeudy.
Okay, well, you certainly have, Trashman. How many Best Ball Mania 3 drafts did you?
Okay, and yeah, but I'm talking about in my season-long leagues.
In your main season-long leagues that you care about, that you manage where you actually manage the roster and stuff like that. I get it. Yeah, I mean, I haven't been a big fan of drafting Jerry Jeudy either, but certainly he's a guy that we've had exposure to in Best Ball, and somebody who in Dynasty we have to think about, because even being lower than consensus on Jeudy, I just don't know. It's like, do we really? I mean,
he reminded me of CeeDee Lamb in that game where they played Kansas City, and they actually put up a fight against them.
Jerry, that's the thing. It's like I need to consistently remind myself of his prospect profile coming out and the prospect that he was. The route runner that he was. There were questions about his hands. Remember, and we're about to talk about Dontayvion Wicks, talking about questions with his hands. But Jerry Jeudy's always been such a technician, and maybe he could be a guy that can get that separation for Russell Wilson and kind of help him kind of get back on track this next year, hopefully with a better offensive situation. The other one was, and we've talked about it here before, but can I just take your temperature again on Michael Pittman? I'm not that interested in Michael Pittman. God, that dog, man, is such a I can't believe you, man. Letting a dog crawl around on your I hope that dog goes number 2 on your shoulder just for having him sit up there like a parrot.
She would never do that. It's her favorite place to be.
It's a disgusting place to be. For those who can't see, there's a little pug sitting on Trashman's shoulder like a parrot. Michael Pittman's going to be 26 this year. Is the quarterback situation, is the answer in sight for you? For me, I don't know what to think. That whole team feels like it's just up in limbo. I know that you felt swindled by them going a little too hard this year.
Majorly swindled.
Jonathan Taylor,
by Pittman.
But
if you look at some of the other receivers that he's around, he's sandwiched in between Chris Godwin and Terry McLaurin, both of whom
I would rather have both of those guys. But I guess with Godwin, you worry about the quarterback situation there.
Yeah, right? And with McLaurin, you might too. We don't really know what's going to happen in Washington next season.
Yeah, well, I think it's going to start out with Sam Howell.
He looked good, and I liked him at the Senior Bowl. He was one of my favorite quarterbacks.
Do you know what I kept thinking when I was watching him in Week 18? I was like, man, I wish I would have stuck with my guns from the very beginning and made Sam Howell my All-Senior Bowl quarterback over Malik Willis.
He was mine.
We all came to the agreement that it was Malik Willis by the end.
I feel like I like Sam Howell more than.
We could go back and check the tape on that. I think by the end we were all pretty.
I can check out my notes. I had good evaluations on Sam Howell.
I should have stuck to my guns on Howell. I thought he looked good. Like he looked like a more serviceable quarterback than Malik Willis has this whole time. And God, that dog. Look at him. I can't believe this. He was more of a projection as to how he was gonna be, at the NFL level, and it just turned out that he looks bad. They had to play. By the end they said we got to roll with Josh Dobbs. We can't even play Malik Willis.
I remember him at the Senior Bowl, his Senior Bowl year. He was actually probably the best quarterback in that Senior Bowl.
Well, I like Josh Dobbs. And do you remember what a good interview he was? What is he, like some kind of astrophysicist or something?
I don't know. I just remember he doesn't have many eyebrows.
One of the smartest football players that I've ever encountered. It's just it's just like.
You remember this other quarterback? It was like Nathan Peterman and like
the Peter Copter. Yeah, man, that's like, a bad year.
And like was it CJ? What was that? When they went to
CJ Beathard. CJ Beathard. Yeah, that was a bad year. That year wasn't as bad as like, oh God, there was one year, Trashman, you weren't there, but it's the best quarterbacks there were Logan Thomas was one of them. And Stephen Morris from Miami, just all like there wasn't anybody there so where you get any decent evaluation on any of these wide receivers. Just completely awful.
Yeah.
This
because we were kind of, like a lot of people are saying the same thing about Trevor Lawrence after his first season.
No, they weren't. They weren't saying that he's unplayable. They weren't saying that we can't even put him in the game. Let's you know what I mean? Let's call a guy for the practice. This guy is so bad.
But Gardner Minshew wasn't like people were like Gardner Minshew all day over Lawrence.
It's a trash man. And Trevor Lawrence came in with the most insane pedigree that anybody's ever seen. The best since Andrew Luck. I mean, Malik Willis.
All I'm saying is like the first year in a quarterback is it's hard to get a beat on the first year on a quarterback, especially on a team that really didn't have a great offensive line.
What do you think about – so you talked – speaking of Malik Willis, this kind of segues into kind of old guys. I'm not sure if Derrick Henry was one that you were thinking about, but
it wasn't him so much as like an Alvin Kamara.
But let's talk about Kamara. But first, let's talk about Derrick Henry because I wanted to talk about it in the context of the new GM. Have you looked into the new Titans GM, Rand Carthen, or sort of know about his background?
No.
Okay, so he comes from San Francisco, where he was the 49ers director of pro personnel.
Okay. I think I read a little blurb about him.
Yeah. So he's been with those guys. He also had been previously with the Rams. He was with the Rams, I believe, until like 2016 or 2017. But he's been with the 49ers for a good long time. And he's the guy who kind of, apparently the decision to draft Trey Lance, even though he's a director of pro personnel, not director of college scouting, he was one of the guys who sort of had some input with that, is what the reporting is. There's been some talk.
That's another question I have.
There's been some talk. I mean, it's just it's out there about the possibility of maybe Trey Lance to Tennessee if they do get rid of Ryan Tannehill. Now, my question is, I mean, it would make sense if it's a guy that Rand Carthen likes, and if the offense that they're moving towards is one that's going to feature a mobile quarterback like we would see Malik Willis being, if he's being the best version of himself. Of course, that's going to be a huge part of the offense is the quarterback run game, right? Whenever you pair that with a runner like Derrick Henry. Now, remember, Derrick Henry is going to be what? Is he going to be 28?
29?
Jesus, 29.
Okay.
But whenever you do,
Derrick Henry doesn't have 29. It's like another running back 26. Well, Derrick Henry didn't start.
Yeah,
for some reasons that I'll never understand. He wasn't used as a bell cow for the first several years.
Which everybody else thought we were so cockamamie for continuing to yell about this stuff, and now 4 years later he's been one of the best running backs in football, and of course nobody comes back to apologize and say your boys from RosterWatch were right this whole time. But he doesn't have quite the tread on the tires, and you can justify saying that if they're going to an offense where it would utilize the best of Malik Willis's skill set, and if they're interested in possibly maybe bringing in a Trey Lance. Now we don't know that that's going to happen, right? But if the 49ers, if the 49ers keep Brock Purdy, it's like, what do it would make sense to at least put the feelers out for Trey Lance. And if that's the case, I like the idea of Derrick Henry for the next year or two at least, and an offense that is going to have the threat of a running quarterback to keep those defensive ends from just coming down, crashing down right on him, letting him get ahead of steam, because once King Henry gets ahead of steam, it's trouble. And I think that was a lot of the impetus for what they wanted to do with Malik Willis this year. Just Malik Willis was just so bad that they couldn't get it going. Do you think maybe get two of those guys in there and see how lightning strikes? Maybe one of them could end up being at least serviceable enough to be able to get some offense going. And then I think if you're worried about Derrick Henry, maybe that would be my bull case for him. Do you have any thoughts on him before you want to talk about Kamara?
I mean, I'm not worried about Derrick Henry. It didn't seem.
Well, you are worried about the fact that he's going to be 29 years old. You have to be, right? I mean, we can't be considering Derrick Henry to still be, just a foundation piece for a dynasty football team. If you're drafting from a startup perspective,
to me, he hasn't really shown. I mean, because the thing is, Derrick Henry loses a step. If he does, that's not the bulk of Derrick Henry's game.
But it's so awesome to see him being so big and so much faster than everyone.
Right, but it doesn't. Some of these backs, they lose a step and that's it.
No, I get it. I mean, I get that.
I mean, Ezekiel Elliott, case in point.
Do you think that, just as an aside, do you think that the Cowboys would just eat $11 million to let Zeke go? I don't. People are.
He said he'd take a pay cut.
Yeah, how much? It's gonna need to be a big pay cut to bring back a guy that runs for 3.2 yards a carry. Like, Zeke looks like he is completely dusted. He's just and I don't. I mean, I guess I don't know.
I think maybe it works in the benefit of the Cowboys with Zeke not playing up to his potential and him knowing that, and also with Pollard coming off of a broken fibula, there might be a lot of apprehension from a lot of teams on taking Pollard on. So I feel like it kind of works for the Cowboys' benefit, and bringing both of those guys back.
It seems like I was reading on Sports Injury Central earlier that it's a fractured fibula, so it's a little bit different, but it's like the worst kind of high ankle sprain. And so what Pro Football Doc is saying is that this thing's going to linger well into free agency. It won't be a kind of thing where he's going to have to pass a physical on it or anything like that, because the team will sign him knowing that the injury exists, right? Yeah. But the timeline on this is 3 to 4 months. So I'm not sure how much I was texting you when it happened. I'm saying we probably need to dock him a little bit. I'm not sure we need to dock him immensely. As I'm looking at it, I don't think you really did. I mean, you got him to a place where he's like kind of just under like Nick Chubb and Joe Mixon, who are both going to be 27. Pollard himself's going to be 26. I think that's fine. I think you basically put him in the right place, and I think we were a little bit bullish on him to begin. We could have been a little bit over.
I think we were higher than consensus on him.
I mean, if you compared it versus the ECR Fantasy Pros, we were like 15 spots high, 18 spots high. So I think it's fine that we got him down just a little bit. About Alvin Kamara, for me, dude, all bets are off. What is your take coming off this season? Because to me, I kept thinking that it was going to be, I'm like, all right, man, it's just like maybe he's been kind of hurt. There's weird stuff going on behind the scenes. But I mean, you just look back at the overall body of work. He did play. How many games did Kamara play in? So Kamara played in 15 games. I mean, he had 77 targets, 57 receptions for 490 and 2 touchdowns. I mean, if you just look at him in PPR scoring, he was. I mean,
his best game of the season was the last game of the. I mean, his best game of the season was the last game of the season.
He finished his RB13. I mean, he almost finished as a wide receiver or as a running back 1. And to me it feels like his fortunes were betrayed at like every turn. It feels to me like it was like everything was just the complete worst, the absolute nut low for what could have happened with him last year.
Yeah.
So are we just going to say it's going to continue just to be the absolute worst for Kamara, or there's that's still lingering? And then there's also the stuff where he's going to have to face up for this stuff with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department over the Pro Bowl stuff. We talked about it like ad nauseum coming into this season about the Pro Bowl incident, and how at the time, whenever it got pushed back into the season, we said, look, guys, you're safe to draft him now. Whether he stinks, whether he gets hurt, whether the rest of it, that's fine. He's not going to get suspended during the season because the NFL is not going to do anything until a court does something, right? Yeah. And so as long as this thing keeps getting pushed back, what his lawyers are going to say during the season is like, look, let's file a continuance or whatever the lawyer speak is, and let's do this after the season's over. We'll get it wrapped up. Now the Alvin Kamara stuff is actually coming down the pike. And so you have like this shit sandwich of everything going wrong last year, right? Everything seeming to conspire against Alvin Kamara, all the Taysom Hill stuff, all the bad quarterback stuff. His head coach is a total donkey, and Dennis Allen's not going anywhere, right?
Yeah.
And then you have that, and now you have the legal stuff, and you just put it all together in a sandwich. The only countervailing argument that I have is it did feel like the world was conspiring against Kamara in 2022, and he still finished as running back 14.7 PPR fantasy points per game. It feels like there's nowhere to go but up, but it's like that's hard to say for a guy who's that old. Yeah, for the guy who's that old facing.
I'm not worried about his age so much. I'm worried about the suspension. That's what's looming for me. I mean, they got a preliminary hearing like March 1st, I believe. If he gets suspended, we were saying, what was it, like a 6-game suspension we were thinking going into the season?
That would get probably, but it's a 6-game suspension that would have to get lowered, because he would appeal it and say, if this is worth a 6-game suspension, why did you let me play in the Pro Bowl after the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department let you know that I was involved in this thing? You knew it on that morning, and you told me that I could play, right? So if I could play in the Pro Bowl, this game that's just making you a bunch of money and stuff like that for, just for the fanfare of it, like you're not going to let me play in actual games for my own money and my own financial future. It's like the NFL. I think that's a fight the NFL wouldn't want to get into with him in the public square. So
they might say that new details have come to light or something like that.
Well, and he'll say indeed. Well, come on. I just don't think that it's anything that I don't.
So you're thinking maybe more like a 3-game suspension?
Yeah, if any, who knows? Maybe he won't get suspended. But I think it's fair for us to worry about it, along with just the crap season and the age getting up there. And I think that that's reflected in the RosterWatch Dynasty Top 250 for our pro members. Trashman will be updating that on Fridays moving forward. The last update was on January 19th. So you'll get the next update on Friday, where Trashman will have a little write-up about that and a little video just detailing the movers as we continue through that stuff. I have one other note. Oh, yeah. So the other thing I just wanted to remind people of to keep an eye out for is on not this Sunday, but a week from Sunday, February 5th, you'll be able to hear us back on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. And you can also listen back on demand in the SiriusXM app with the whole Senior Bowl recap. So we're not going to do any shows live from the Senior Bowl. We're going to be doing our podcasting with the player profiler guys and the Roto Wonderworld radio stuff. But we will have a complete breakdown 2 hours long on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio that you'll be able to hear back if you're a subscriber over there to Sirius. And that's not this Sunday, but next Sunday from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. All right, Trash Man, let's talk about Dontayvion Wicks, the wide receiver out of Virginia. I can just tell you kind of real quick sort of what I thought when I watched him. 2022 and 2021 were like a different, to me, it was like a different player. I don't know what happened because he had the same quarterback. There was a coaching change, right? wasn't Bronco Mendenhall was fired after the 2021 season, I do believe. But that couldn't have been everything. I know that Virginia also this year had a horrible tragedy involving their football team, where they tragically lost a few members of their football team. That happened in November, though, so I'm not sure how much you can attribute that to the early season struggles of Dontayvion Wicks this year. Dontayvion Wicks, he'll be 23 his first year in the NFL. He's listed an unofficial 6'2", 208 pounds. As far as his production this season, it was not good in 2022. He had 16% of the team's receptions, 19% of the team's receiving yards, 29% of the team's receiving TDs for a total production percentage of 21%. As a high school prospect, he was a 3-star in the class of 2019. The one thing that I look at was 2022. The drops were absolutely horrible. PFF had him with 9 drops. That was just a miserable 23.1% drop rate. That was actually tied for 4th worst in all of FBS among qualifiers. 4th worst. There are like 415 qualifiers on that list. So, I mean, it's really, really bad to be 4th worst. During his 2021 campaign, where he really broke out as a junior, it was like 2021. He looks like a different player. His drop was only an 8.1%. So take from that what you will. But for a guy to have a 23.1% drop rate from a quarterback that he's actually used to being with feels like a little bit concerning. The other metric that just sort of stood out to me from 2021 was he was top 10 in FBS in yards per route run, which everybody knows is just a super, super solid stat to look at. It's a powerful stat for our weekly in-season projections, and it's one that in prospecting has shown a lot of correlation with players kind of being good, right?
Yeah, he broke Herman Moore's receiving record that season too at Virginia.
Yeah. But I really want to see his hands in real life. Do you know what I want to see in real life? I don't want to just see it. I want to hear his hands. I want to hear I'm serious. I want to hear if that ball slaps into his hands and it doesn't feel natural, I'm going to be hands off with Dontayvion Wicks. But he does have some things about his game that you can like. If you want to kind of break him down, you're the one who wrote this up, so you can.
I mean, what do you think? He's a really good route runner. He's a savvy route runner, and that makes me tend to think that his issue with drops is not like a technical issue. I think maybe it's a concentration issue. I think maybe something was going on off the field that we just don't know about. Lack of concentration. I don't think it was a technique thing, because he's got really good technique in his route running. He's got a comprehensive route tree. He wins off the line of scrimmage. He's got a quick release. He's got really nuanced footwork. Uses double moves and head fakes really effectively.
Well, that's what I was going to say too, man. He can really stack these guys. What he's good at is he
sinks his hips low. He's a big guy who can sink his hips low.
Yeah, and he's also really good at he's really good at just how do you say it? I mean, just like being deceptive with his play speed. It's like he'll start out
changing speeds. You can change his speeds.
Like he changes gears really, really deceptively. It really helps him to get open. That's one thing that I noticed for sure. That reminded me of, I mean, my comp for him was Tyler Johnson. I thought he played a lot like him. It was funny to see what your comp was, because the guy who you comped to was one of my early comps for Tyler Johnson. But anyway, you can this video we're showing here is from Dontayvion Wicks Instagram, one of these little montages that he kind of put together here as he was leaving Virginia with some of his highlight plays.
Yeah, he's got good body control. He tracks the ball well through the air. Like I said, he's good at changing directions for a guy that's prototypical big receiver. And he's productive all over the field. He's a consistent chain mover, but he's got deep play ability as well. He's willing to fight for the ball at the catch point, but he does let the ball into his chest more than I'd like to see. He's not the fastest player down the field.
I don't think his hands are natural. That's my initial thought. This is why we go to the Senior Bowl, right? Too many balls into the chest. You know, I totally agree. And also just even on the like the thumbnail image that is on the site for the profile, it's like if you just look at it when he's catching the ball, like his eyes aren't even on the football, and the football's landed in a weird spot where it's on his wrist. And you know what I mean? It's like there are just some times where I can't really tell if he's one of these dudes with these kind of magnetic Velcro hands, like not everybody's going to be Odell Beckham, but it's just like, it's one of the things I'm fascinated to see with Dontayvion Wicks this week at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, I think, and the comp that I made was Allen Robinson, who, has been a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde player in the NFL up to this point.
I mean, Allen Robinson, wait, dude, is Allen Robinson even a good comp at this point? Do you even want to be comped to Allen Robinson?
Well, that's the thing. I feel about Wicks kind of like I feel about Robinson. I don't know if his troubles are in his head or in his hands. It's really hard to tell because we've seen how good Allen Robinson can be. And it's somewhere in the past 2 years, he just turned a corner and, is a shadow of his former self. But we've seen the upside, and we've seen that, when he was coming to the league, he was highly touted, kind of possession guy that could stretch the field on occasion, relied on his route running rather than his speed. And I feel like Wicks is that kind of player. But like Robinson, he's a player where you really don't know what you're going to get just yet. And I feel like that's why we have to evaluate him at the Senior Bowl.